Nakisa works at the UFC. He is used to coming out to fight music, so that was great. I was expecting a little more hip-hop or something, but that's cool.
I apologize.
Thank you very much for joining us today. My name is David Katz. I'm the founder and CEO of thepostgame.com. We've got two esteemed panelists, one who got in about 3 minutes ago from New York, so thank you for joining. We've got Don Cornwell, partner at PJT Partners. Tell us a little bit about what you do there and who the companies are that you represent as one of the top sports bankers in the United States.
Sure thing. I spent 16 years at Morgan Stanley as the head of their sports group, and a bunch of us started a new firm called PJT Partners about a year ago. In that time, we've worked with the NFL, helping them think through relocation to Los Angeles. We've worked with the NBA on issues around broadcast rights. We're currently reviewing strategic alternatives / selling the Pittsburgh Penguins, and we also worked on a deal with the Detroit Pistons. In my background, I've worked with AS Roma, I sold IMG to William Morris, recapped the Pittsburgh Steelers, and last year sold the Buffalo Bills.
Very nice. Nakisa Bidarian is the Chief Strategy Officer for UFC, and for the one person out there who doesn't know what that is, that's the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Nakisa, tell us a little bit about your day-to-day.
Sure. My role at the UFC is focused on corporate development, strategic planning, research, analytics, consumer insights, and overall strategy. So what all that really means is I don't focus on the day-to-day activities. I don't get involved in event operations. My team and I are looking at really what we need to do to stay ahead of the sports sector, the entertainment sector, the media sector, and how we can be well positioned 5-10 years from now.
Okay, so let's get into this. It used to be that sports leagues and properties' main job was to sell off their media rights, and then they don't have to deal with anything from a media perspective at that point. It's the job of the network or the cable network to do that. Let's talk about whether sports leagues, properties like the UFC, do you guys need to be media companies? Are you media companies?
I think I would say 100% we view ourselves as a media company. Our number one job is to think about content creation, distribution, and consumption. When the founders of the UFC founded the UFC, their focus was on controlling production. So we are one of the few sports organizations around the world that actually produces its own events. So everything you see on TV, when Conor McGregor is fighting, or Ronda Rousey is fighting, our own in-house team is actually producing that production and delivering it to our media partners like BT, like Sky, like Foxes of the world. So definitely a media company.
Don, what do you think?
Yeah, the way I think about it is all the leagues are at this point media companies. Think of it this way. Think of a movie studio where every bit of content they produce is a hit. And that's why sports are so dominant, because everything that they do at the UFC is popular. Every fan wants to watch every single event, and they never have bad ones. They're always great.
Do you find that there's a media mentality difference between US-based sports leagues and, let's say, European-based sports leagues?
Yeah, the US leagues are more centralized. I think you find situations in Europe like Real Madrid where a club / company can go off and do things on their own a lot more. I think the trend in Europe is to centralize more. Serie A is a good example of that. They're consolidating their broadcast rights. In the US, whether it's the NFL, the NBA, they've been acting as a consolidated group for a long period of time.
Nakisa, in the case of the UFC, do you see a difference in the way Europeans versus Americans consume the UFC content?
It exists because of the difference in the distribution platform. So obviously, our premium content in the US is viewed through pay-per-view, which is at a $50 to $60 price point, versus in the US or in Europe, a lot of times that's not done through pay-per-view, but traditional cable and satellite.
So who do you think does the best job as a sports league anywhere in the world in terms of really embracing this media mentality?
Other than the UFC.
Yeah, let me put you guys. You're not a league, right? You just kind of own your organization and you own a sport. Look, they're all doing a great job, and they're all potential clients. So I'm not actually going to single one out.
Can't ask that to an investment banker.
But they're all doing a really good job. I think. Look, the world of sports has changed, where it used to be that you cared about selling tickets, selling beer, getting people to come to your events. In effect, I go back to my movie analogy. The people in the stands are a prop. where you get the money is through distribution, and it's leveraging the content, whether that's through traditional media outlets or more likely now it's over the top and things that we'll talk about in a moment.
So technology, we're here at the Web Summit. Technology is really providing a huge shift in the way consumers are going to be consuming this content, receiving this content. It seems like the whole value chain is changing. From a technological perspective, what innovation do you think is having the greatest impact on the way people are consuming their content today?
So, I mean, there's the basic answer, which is obviously the internet, and I think Nakisa can talk a little bit about the great things they're doing with their content and over the top. To me, the thing that's really interesting that gets me excited is virtual reality. When I think about the ability to sit on your couch and have a courtside or an octagon side seat, that's going to allow the organizations and the leagues to charge more money. So, David, you may want to have just a traditional high definition view of a fight, whereas I may choose to do the virtual reality view where I'm seeing it at really octagon side, or I'm actually have a view from on top of the octagon, and I'll pay more money for that. And that's going to allow the leagues to really monetize more so than they're even doing today.
I would add to that and say from our perspective, the most disruptive technology has been the iPhone or the smartphone. Effectively, that's become a consumer's first screen in terms of viewing content, and there's a best screen for the bigger content, but you've now moved from an environment where you're creating and developing content to show on that best screen to creating content for social media, for web, for viral content. So that little device has resulted in having to feed 20, 30 different distribution platforms versus traditionally just having that best screen / what used to be the first screen. So it's added a lot to it.
Let me add one thing. Sort of the next frontier, when you think about your traditional TV viewing experience, I'll use the Super Bowl since I'm an American. You have millions of people watching the same thing at the same time. The advertisements are part of the show. The fact of the matter is, I haven't bought a Buick or eaten McDonald's in 20 years, but I see lots of commercials that are Buick and McDonald commercials. The future is when we have the data and I'm watching over the top, they can actually advertise to me. We do that already, obviously, on the internet. The challenge is, and the holy grail for sports team owners is when I can actually sell ads that are direct to me. And you think about the return that you could get on an event like the Super Bowl, it's spectacular.
So you just talked about over the top and this direct to consumer play. If you're looking out 5 years, how much of the media landscape for these sports leagues is going to go straight to the consumer, bypassing the traditional networks? You know, the networks write them the check, they take the risk, but they also make the profit. And as these leagues try to get more and more of that incremental profit, the ability to go direct to consumer seems like a real opportunity for them.
It is. I think you'll always have a hybrid. I do think that the networks do a great job of curating content, right? So those of us in the States like to watch ESPN because we don't have to think about what it is that we want to watch. We sit there and they tell us what's good. I do think the avid fans will go out and sign up for packages like Fight Pass, so they can actually go out and get all the content they want and consume it when they want and how they want it. So I think in the future we'll have a hybrid.
Nakisa, what are you guys doing from an OTT perspective right now?
We I think are in a unique position in that our content has always had a significant portion of it be transactional, right? So that means our consumers are used to paying directly for our content. And to Don's point, we see the evolution being a balance between traditional distribution and over-the-top distribution. We've created a platform called Fight Pass, about 18 months in the making, which really has a vast library of UFC content curated, in addition to live and exclusive fights. So that's our over-the-top platform, which may migrate to be a full offering at some point, parallel to the distribution platforms that we have with cable and satellite.
I think it's a really good point because most people who are paying for sports content today through their cable or satellite provider, at least in the United States, don't really think of themselves as paying for that specific content. They're buying a package of entertainment, and the time is going to come when the unbundling of these channels happens, and people are not going to be forced to pay for, let's say, an ESPN, where they're paying $6.50 per subscriber per month, even if they don't watch sports. That unbundling is going to cause a lot of havoc. It might be why places like ESPN are cutting costs right now as they see a 7% decline in their subscriber base. And you guys are very well positioned at UFC because, yes, you are already getting people to pay for it, and you've already crossed that mentality in people's minds. It's a huge
And I
advantage.
think in the instance of ESPN, what will happen over time is they'll have their traditional distribution deals, and then they'll have their direct-to-consumer at a higher price point. So while they might lose subs, I think they'll make up the revenue for it by having an increased average revenue per user.
So now that everyone's a media company in this sports space, and they focus primarily on selling off the live rights to games and maybe a highlight package, I'm curious as to what you think the value of what I'll call, for lack of a better term, ancillary programming, shoulder programming, all the stuff that happens outside the octagon or off the pitch. How important is that content to the overall mix and the experience for sports fans?
I think it's actually a real opportunity. If you look take Real Madrid, as I talked about before, what they've done with their content away from the pitch, whether it's training videos, whether it's press conferences, the avid fan can get an inside look at the sport like they couldn't in the past, and they're willing to pay for it. And I think other teams across the globe look at what they do, and they say, wow, Real Madrid's really figured this out, and it's only a matter of time before other teams and other organizations do the same.
I 100% agree. I think we look at it, ancillary programming, as twofold. One, it's feeding the avid fan who wants to consume 360 everything about our sport and athletes. And two, it's actually trying to connect with the casual fan or the non-fan through a differentiated offering. So one of the things we did 5 years ago was create a brick and mortar platform called UFC Gym, which is really a curated UFC environment where the average fitness person can go into a gym and learn about the UFC, learn about martial arts, but also get their regular fitness program through that platform. And as a result of that, we're now looking at doing things with David in the post game and bringing that from a media perspective online.
I'm glad you guys both agree with that, because that is the exact basis that the postgame.com was founded on, the idea that the human interest, the personal stories, and the health, fitness, nutrition, lifestyle experience around sports, in many respects, is bigger than the match itself. The match comes, people analyze it, you move on, but all of this other stuff is actually a way to broaden the tent. It brings in female viewers in a way that, the actual sport in certain cases may not bring as many in, but when they get involved in the story, and this is not a new concept, it worked for the Olympics for many years, the up close and personal, that is really what we're trying to focus on at the post game and with all partners like yourselves. What is the biggest threat to your business as we get to the 5-minute mark of our very short panel here? What's the biggest threat to your business? What keeps you guys up at night, or in your case, keeps you up at night on behalf of your clients?
I mean, from our perspective, it always has been, always is, and always will be around talent, right? So obviously, Dublin, Ireland has become a hotbed for UFC and mixed martial arts, but it's driven by the success that Irish athletes have had in the sport. So our job 24/7 is to identify, nurture, and create world-renowned talent that people want to consume and see.
Mm-hmm. For me, it's the leagues themselves or the teams or the organizations not understanding the consumer. There's folks like the UFC who are doing things that are progressive. They're reaching out to the young audiences. And then there's others, Major League Baseball for one, Formula One's another, where they're probably behind. And they haven't done as good a job of really embracing the change in the way in which people consume, and they're missing generations, right? There's 10-year-old kids who do not watch TV. They consume all of their content on an iPad or an iPhone. If you're not able to watch your hometown team, you're not going to become a fan, and you kind of lose that generation. That's a real problem.
So much of the money is tied up in the live game rights or the live fight rights. How big a threat are technologies like Periscope and Meerkat, these live streaming apps? Because all I read about is the arenas are all trying to build a better game day experience to fill the seats in a very competitive entertainment landscape. So they all have Wi-Fi now and technology. And then everyone has a cell phone, and they're all using their mobile phones at the match. Are you concerned at all about, the phenomenon that supposedly happened during the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight of people periscoping these fights and these matches?
We are not. We like to embrace new technology, find ways to work with new technology. ultimately people want to have the best experience possible. You know, I'd like to think that the overall UFC experience that the produced event provides you is always going to be superior to that iPhone or tablet that's taking the video. So we're finding ways to work with those potential technology providers and see them as additive versus negative.
Yeah. Piracy's always been a problem, right? I'm probably older than everybody in the room, and I used to watch HBO in my TV with wavy lines because we couldn't afford HBO. So I could sort of see the movie, but I couldn't because it had a wavy line in it. That was piracy. You know, the internet, people can get NFL feeds if you're really, if you're really creative. You can get them today. I think piracy is going to always be a problem. Periscope, in many ways, is actually good because it's making sure that sports like mixed martial arts or baseball are getting to younger audiences, right? So it's a way of connecting people.
Okay, a couple quick hitters here. A lot has been made about soccer, let's call it football because we're in Europe, and the popularity and the growth of it in the United States. Do you see that as an ascending sport in the U.S., and what is it going to take for it to continue to grow?
Big time. I think it could potentially surpass, you know, there's sort of the big four of football, basketball, baseball, hockey. It could surpass one of those. I won't say which one. And I think what it takes is for the U.S. to have some success at the World Cup. And what's happening is with concussion issues in American football, we're seeing lots of young talent go to soccer or European football. And the minute a LeBron James type guy, a freak athlete, shows up on the pitch, watch out.
Nakisa, what do you think?
We like to say we're the youngest sport in the U.S., but unfortunately we're number 2 to Major League Soccer. The fan base of Major League Soccer is predominantly Hispanic to date. That is the fastest growing segment of the population in the U.S. No doubt they will one day be one of the big 4 sports. And to Don's point, I think it's just going to take, whether it's World Cup success or having a few American players that are actually on the world stage level, playing in the Premier League or playing in the rest of Europe, I think then soccer will ascend to the top.
All right, so let's flip the script now. They just played 3 NFL games in England. I was walking by a pub on Sunday, many pubs, and I saw one pub have the game on in the afternoon, and it had like 7 people in it. Which of the predominantly popular American sports do you think has the greatest opportunity to become more of a European interest?
Well, mixed martial arts for one, but it's already a European sport. Everybody fights. Look, basketball is obviously very popular here, and the NBA has done a great job in Europe and all over the globe. I think that's probably the pretty obvious one.
Other than your sport,
yeah.
What do you think has the best chance from an American perspective?
I think it's the vice versa of what we talked about soccer in the U.S. Whatever sport has the highest concentration of successful European athletes will resonate well in Europe. Hence why we're resonating well in Europe at the moment.
Fantastic. Well, that's our panel. We've got 5 seconds left. No time for Q&A. Thank you very much. Appreciate
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for the panelists.
Appreciate it.